Watch this before you shop at Shein again, because what you're about to hear will completely change how you see that cheap little haul. Shein looks harmless, fun even, just an app full of trendy clothes, crazy low prices, and influencers telling you to run, not walk. It feels like fashion without consequences. No guilt, no thinking, just scroll, tap, buy. But that feeling, it's carefully engineered, because behind the cute dresses, the $5 tops, and the endless flash sales is a system so extreme that even other fast fashion brands are struggling to keep up. A system built on speed at any cost. A system that's quietly raising alarms around labor, safety, chemicals, and the environment, while millions of packages keep landing on doorsteps across America every single day. This isn't about judging anyone. Almost everyone watching this has bought from Shein, or at least seriously considered it. This is about seeing the full picture, the part you never see in haul videos, discount codes, or sponsored posts. And once you see it, shopping there won't feel so casual anymore. The illusion. Why Shein feels too good to be true. Shein doesn't feel like a normal brand. It feels endless. Open the app, and there's always something new. Not next week, not next season, right now. Thousands of new items uploaded daily, dresses you've never seen, tops that look suspiciously like something that went viral on TikTok 3 days ago. That's not luck, that's the business model. Traditional fashion brands design collections months in advance. Shein watches what you scroll past, what you save, what you linger on, and then turns that data into clothes at a speed that borders on absurd. Trends aren't predicted, they're harvested. If something pops off online, Shein can produce a version almost immediately. And here's the psychological trick. Abundance kills hesitation. When everything is cheap and endless, you stop asking questions. You don't ask how it's made, you don't ask who made it, you don't even ask if you really want it. You think it's only $8 and move on. Multiply that by millions of shoppers, and suddenly you're not buying clothes, you're feeding a machine. And machines don't care about ethics, machines care about output. Ultra-fast fashion, faster than fast, riskier than you think. Fast fashion was already controversial. Shein went further and created ultra-fast fashion, a system so aggressive that even brands like Zara and H&M look slow by comparison. Shein doesn't test a style by committing to a full production run. It produces small batches, throws them online, and watches what sells. If people buy, production explodes. If not, the item disappears like it never existed. This sounds efficient, but it creates brutal pressure behind the scenes, because someone, somewhere, has to make those clothes appear overnight. Investigations into Shein's supply chain have pointed to clusters of factories in China, often referred to as Shein Village. And the stories coming out of these places are deeply uncomfortable. Workers describing schedules that stretch to 70+ hours a week, months without a single day off. Pay based on how many pieces you can finish, not how long you work. If you slow down, you earn less. If you rush, mistakes happen. And when the entire system is built on speed, safety, and well-being become optional, even Shein itself has admitted there are serious problems. In reports to lawmakers, the company acknowledged finding child labor cases in its supply chain in both 2023 and 2024, not decades ago. Recently, that alone should stop anyone in their tracks. Think about that the next time a dress costs less than lunch. The secret that let Shein flood America. So how did Shein manage to dominate the US so quickly? For years, it benefited from a trade loophole most people had never heard of. Under a rule called de minimis, packages entering the US under a certain value could avoid tariffs and face minimal inspection. The threshold was shockingly high, $800. That meant Shein didn't need to ship massive containers to US warehouses. Instead, it could send millions of small packages directly to individual homes. One order, one bag, one delivery, harder to track, harder to inspect, faster to move. By 2024, more than 1 billion packages were entering the US this way every year. Let that sink in. 1 billion opportunities for products to bypass the kind of scrutiny we assume exists. 1 billion chances for unsafe items, mislabeled materials, or poorly tested products to slip through. In 2025, the US moved to end duty-free treatment for low-value imports from China and Hong Kong, targeting exactly this kind of operation. But the damage was already done. The habit was formed. Shein trained shoppers to expect instant gratification at rock-bottom prices, and trained the system to deliver it at any cost. What's actually in these clothes? Now let's talk about something that hits closer to home than labor statistics: the clothes on your skin. Independent testing by environmental groups has found that some Shein products contained hazardous chemicals above legal limits set by the European Union. Substances linked to hormones hormone disruption. Chemicals used to soften plastics, resist stains, or lock in color. In some cases, heavy metals. This doesn't mean every Shein item is dangerous. But it does mean quality control is inconsistent, and risk is unevenly distributed to the consumer. You don't know which item was carefully tested, and which one slipped through because speed mattered more than safety. If you've ever opened a package and noticed a strong chemical smell, that's not just factory scent, that's chemistry. And people don't all react to it the same way. Some experience skin irritation, others headaches, others nothing at all. That unpredictability is part of the problem. Because when a company produces at this scale and speed, testing every item properly becomes incredibly difficult. Washing clothes before wearing them helps, but it doesn't erase deeper issues around what's being used to make them in the first place. And this isn't just about adults. Shein has faced US recalls involving children's products, including pajamas that violated federal flammability standards. That's not a fashion issue, that's a safety failure, the copying problem no one wants to admit. Then there's the issue designers talk about in whispers until it happens to them. Small brands and independent creators have repeatedly accused Shein of copying their designs. Not inspired by, not trend adjacent, directly copied, sometimes down to unique details, sometimes lifted from a viral post, reproduced cheaply, and sold globally within weeks. Imagine pouring time, money, and creativity into an original design only to see it appear on Shein for a fraction of the price, before you've even finished your own launch. For small creators, that can be devastating. Shein often responds by saying it removes listings when complaints are verified. But the damage is usually already done. The cheaper version floods the market, the original gets buried, and the creator is left fighting a giant with an army of lawyers and an endless catalog. This is what happens when speed beats originality. When copying is faster than creating, the system rewards whoever can move the quickest, not whoever can make something meaningful. The environmental cost we pretend not to see. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Shein doesn't just sell clothes, it sells disposability. When items are that cheap, they're treated as temporary, worn once, maybe twice, then forgotten, donated, or thrown away. But clothing waste doesn't disappear when it leaves your closet. It piles up, it gets shipped overseas, it ends up in landfills or burned. Ultra-fast fashion accelerates this cycle beyond anything the planet can realistically handle. Shein produces at a volume that's almost impossible to comprehend. And even if some of those items are loved and worn for years, many are not. The system assumes churn. It depends on it. And while Shein has made statements about sustainability, critics have repeatedly called those efforts superficial compared to the scale of production. When you're adding thousands of new items every day, eco-friendly initiatives start to look like a bandage on a bullet wound. Why this story matters more than you think. It's easy to shrug and say, that's just how fashion works now. But Shein isn't just another brand, it's a blueprint. Other companies are watching closely. If this model succeeds without consequences, it becomes the standard. That means more pressure on workers, less oversight, faster cycles, cheaper materials, more waste, more risk pushed onto consumers. And the scariest part? Most people don't feel any of this in the moment. All they feel is a good deal, a fun package, a quick hit of excitement. That's how systems like this survive, not through force, but through convenience. Because when something feels cheap and fun, you don't look for the catch. You assume there isn't one, but there is, and we're only halfway through the story. And this is where the Shein story stops being interesting and starts being unsettling. Because once you zoom out far enough, you realize Shein isn't just another controversial brand doing questionable things behind closed doors. It's a stress test for how far a global system can be pushed before something breaks. Workers, consumers, regulators, or the planet itself. The addiction loop nobody talks about. Shein doesn't just sell clothes, it sells urgency. Flash sales that reset every few hours. Countdown timers that make you feel like you're missing out on something life-changing instead of a polyester top. Prices that drop so low, your brain stops categorizing the purchase as money spent and starts treating it like a harmless game. This is intentional. Behavioral researchers have long known that when choices feel abundant and cheap, people disengage from long-term thinking. You don't ask, will I wear this in a year? You ask, why not? And that question is poison to mindful consumption. The app rewards constant checking. It rewards impulse. It rewards boredom shopping at midnight. And because returns can be inconvenient, especially across borders, a lot of items never go back. They sit in closets. They get tossed. They quietly become waste. What looks like freedom, endless choice, endless affordability, is actually a loop designed to keep you buying more, faster, and with less reflection each time. When "it's just clothes" stops being true. There's a reason defenders of Shein often say, "it's just clothes," because calling it just clothes makes everything easier to ignore. But clothes are chemicals. Clothes are labor. Clothes are water usage, carbon emissions, shipping fuel, factory conditions, and waste streams. When production hits the scale Shein operates at, just clothes becomes infrastructure, and that's where the danger lies. Because when a system is this large, even small failures compound. One unsafe chemical batch doesn't stay small. One exploited factory doesn't stay isolated. One copied design doesn't just hurt one creator. The ripple effects spread quietly, globally, and fast. That's why governments are suddenly paying attention. Why lawmakers are asking questions about supply chains, trade loopholes, and consumer safety. Why watchdog groups keep testing Shein products. Why journalists keep circling back to the same company again and again. Shein isn't being scrutinized because it's popular. It's being scrutinized because it represents a tipping point, the transparency problem. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Most people don't actually know where their Shein clothes come from. Ask the average shopper where a Shein item was made, under what conditions, or by whom, and the answer is usually a shrug. Not because they don't care, but because the information is nearly impossible to trace clearly. The supply chain is massive, fragmented, and constantly shifting. That lack of transparency is a feature, not a bug. When production is spread across hundreds or thousands of suppliers, accountability becomes slippery. If one factory is exposed, another steps in. If one listing gets pulled, 10 more appear. Responsibility dissolves into the system itself. And when companies promise audits and reforms, consumers are left to trust statements they can't verify. You're told things are improving. You're told standards are being raised. But the scale keeps growing. The pace keeps accelerating. And the core model, extreme speed at extreme volume, remains untouched. The human cost we don't see on screen. It's easy to forget the human side when all you see is a perfectly lit haul video. You don't see the person sewing the seam for the 10th hour straight. You don't see the worker rushing to meet a quota because rent is due. You don't see the exhaustion that comes with working every day of the month because missing a shift means losing income. You also don't see the long-term cost of that pressure. Repetitive strain injuries, burnout, health issues that don't make headlines, lives shaped around production cycles designed for algorithms, not humans. Fast fashion has always relied on invisible labor. Ultra-fast fashion just hides it better behind apps, influencers, and next-day shipping expectations, the illusion of choice. One of the most powerful myths Shein sells is the idea of freedom. Freedom to express yourself. Freedom to try trends. Freedom to experiment. But real freedom includes the ability to choose without being manipulated, without artificial urgency, without systems designed to override your better judgment. When everything is trending, nothing is meaningful. When everything is disposable, nothing is valued. And when clothes are cheaper than the cost of producing them responsibly, the system is telling you something is wrong, even if it's whispering instead of screaming. Why this isn't about boycotts or moral purity, let's be clear. This isn't about telling people to never shop fast fashion again, or pretending ethical shopping is easy or accessible for everyone. It's not. People buy from Shein because money is tight, because options are limited, because fashion is one of the few affordable pleasures left. That reality matters. But awareness matters too, because companies respond to pressure, to regulation, to shifts in public perception. And none of that happens if everyone pretends nothing is wrong. You don't have to be perfect to be informed. You just have to stop pretending ignorance is harmless. The bigger question Shein forces us to ask. At the end of the day, Shein forces a question we're all avoiding. How cheap is too cheap? At what point does affordability stop being empowering and start being extractive? At what point does convenience turn into complicity? Not because consumers are bad people, but because the system is built to keep them in the dark. Shein didn't invent these problems, but it amplified them. It showed what happens when speed, data, and global logistics are pushed to their absolute limit, with profit as the only non-negotiable goal. And now that we've seen it, we can't unsee it. So, should you shop at Shein again? That's the question everyone wants answered. And the truth is, no one can make that decision for you, but you can make it with your eyes open. You can recognize that a $10 dress doesn't come without cost, even if you're not the one paying it directly. You can slow down, buy less, ask questions, support alternatives when you can, treat clothes as something meant to last, not vanish. Because the most powerful thing you can do in a system built on mindless speed is to pause. Shein thrives in silence, in distraction, in the gap between what we see and what we don't. And the reason this story matters isn't because Shein is uniquely evil, it's because it shows us exactly where unchecked consumer culture leads. When no one stops to ask, wait, how is this even possible? If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means it worked. If it made you rethink a purchase, even better. And if you've ever had a strange experience with Shein, weird quality, chemical smells, copied designs, or something that just didn't sit right, share it in the comments. These conversations only happen when people speak up. Like the video if you learned something new. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this. And send this to a friend who loves a good Shein haul, because they deserve to know what's really behind it.